Oh, the Zoom lady said that we're live streaming.
I thought this was called Pop Culture Coffee Hour.
Listen, if it was socially acceptable to drink coffee at this hour, I 100% would be doing it.
What would make it not socially acceptable?
I don't know, but when I go to Philopticos meetings and they start at 7:30, they only serve decaf, and it's the most depressing thing ever. It's just dirty water.
Like
Pop
skim
Culture
milk.
Coffee Hour at night.
Decaf.
Stephen, Christian, and Emma and Christina do a podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, the singing.
I mean, why not? At the end of the day, why not?
I do have my first Philopticos meeting in real life in 2 years tomorrow night. I'm really excited.
Wow.
I miss my Philopticos lady friends. No one else probably shares this.
I was gonna say, would it be weird if I said me too? Like, I don't even know how to respond to that. Me too.
I mean, I have Philopticos lady friends.
It's true.
I don't serve on the Philopticos, but I have Philopticos lady friends.
So that's now we're getting into questions of identity.
As I sip on my Greek mountain tea.
Are they primarily defined by their participation in Philopticos, or are they primarily defined by their identity as ladies?
Oh.
Because it's like they're ladies who are experiencing Philopticos, is what I would say.
Right, we should use people forward language.
Yes, exactly. People who are ladies experiencing Philopticos.
I mean, I think I have problems with all of this way of identifying oneself.
Christina, I have a lot of problems with a lot of things.
I thought you were just
Number one
going to
on the
stop with
list.
I have a lot of problems.
Is myself. Yes, correct. That's exactly right. Let's talk about all of my problems. Pop culture intervention hour.
Stop it, Christian.
No one signed up for that.
Me, more about me, less about you, more about me.
Everybody's getting intervened. That's why everybody's getting intervened.
Wow.
Definitely any caffeinated coffee for that.
For the spontaneous improv.
Yeah.
Yes, pop culture impartial intervention hour.
Not deep.
Everyone's equally problematic. Yeah.
Where everyone's doing something wrong. So I feel like since the last time we gathered together, we've all sunk into the morass of shame to greater extents than in the past. That's what I'm picking up from this.
Can I share something that I feel like this group would appreciate?
Please.
So when last we were together, we did Hamilton, did we not?
All of us? Yeah. No.
Didn't we? When all four of us were together, didn't we do Hamilton?
No, we did Life is Beautiful, but we did do
Yes.
Oh, but we did
all
Hamilton
four
prior
together.
to that,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Mhm.
So on Wednesday, I'm going to see Hamilton with my lovely wife because it's here in Tempe, where I live, where my house is, where I'm currently at.
That's exciting.
That'll be super
I
cool.
Is it
know.
going to be a good cast?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Notice how his enthusiasm was tempered there for just a moment. Is it going to be a good cast?
Great. Now I'm not excited anymore. Now I don't even want to go. Now I don't even want to go. I don't even want to go anymore.
That'll be very exciting for you.
They're
Yeah.
not the cast. They're people who happen to be performing in the stage
Right.
play Hamilton.
We're experiencing the cast side of the performance of Hamilton. Yeah. Are we really going to reduce these people in the play to the roles that they play on stage?
Oh, y'all are too much. I
Oh,
can't say the things I think about some of these conversations.
just visible discomfort brews. That's all.
Uh-huh. All right, well, here we are.
Here we
We
are.
did it.
People who do podcasts.
Yes,
We are
right.
people who
Look
do
who's
podcasts.
back. Back again.
For season 7, right?
Unbelievable.
Is it? Is it though?
Is it not?
Unbelievable or season 7?
Both.
I don't know. That just sounds like a
It's-
lot.
It's not season 7.
Okay. Okay. I think we
Maybe
met
in
the
like a
middle.
variant timeline, this is season 7.
So who's the alligator?
Not it.
Wait, do they have like a Hogwarts hat kind of like testing for this to see which Loki you are? I feel like that should
Ooh.
exist.
Or like a BuzzFeed quiz.
Yeah.
I recently came across a test that was called which heretic are you? And so I took it, and
You got a heretic? A heretic?
I was
Wait,
Teresa
I need
of
to
Avila.
know.
I guess all things considered, that's not bad, right? Teresa of
You
Avila?
got Teresa of Avila?
I did.
That's good.
I know, that's
She-
how I felt.
She's pretty dope.
Wait,
Like if you
what
have to
is
pick
like
a
a heresy?
heretic, you
I don't know enough about like Catholic
I don't either.
things. I
Maybe
didn't
just that she's
think she was
Catholic. I don't know.
considered a heretic.
Yeah.
I didn't
thought-
either.
That
I
seems
thought she
like
was a saint.
a harsh label for her.
I mean,
But I was like, all right, towing the edge of orthodoxy. Fine, it's good, it's good, it's good, good.
I thought you were going to drop
I
like
feel-
a Paul of Samosata or an Arius
Wait.
or something on this. But no,
That'd be
Teresa.
way more fun. That'd be way more fun. But
Emma, I
no.
feel like Grandpa Hopko used to love quoting Teresa of Avila.
He did. He did
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know, Christian.
What is
I
Sign
think
this
I
quiz.
have. I think I have his. I
Man.
actually think I have his copy of Interior Castle somewhere.
That's cool.
There you
Pretty
go.
I know
Who
people are
designed
like,
this
"That's so
quiz?"
cool," and I'm like, "Where?
I'm
I don't
just
even know what these
saying
books
what
are."
the quiz. I'm just saying what I got on the quiz. I'm not saying she's a heretic. Look, she was a person experiencing heresy.
Aren't we all? All right, I feel like you need to send us all this quiz / possibly incite
I will.
YouTube by putting it in the description, the doobly-doo of this video.
Yes, that would be.
I will do that
That'd be good
when
stuff.
I type it out later because I forgot to type it before we started. So right now this live stream is going out with an empty doobly-doo, but we shall populate the doobly-doo with links. Are you or somebody you know in danger of heresy? Call 1-800 Pop Culture Coffee Hour.
Maybe our first voice memo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is something that's kind of fun, as we're entering into the 7th season of this shindig. We're trying to upgrade to Hootenanny here, and we're thinking that maybe, I don't know, this is an idea that we were throwing around the old back channels, but possibly having a Pop Culture Coffee Hour hotline where you could call and leave questions and comments and concerns, and maybe even text messages. If this seems like something that you would be interested in, call our non-existent hotline. Let us know what you think.
Or email Steve, or put it in the comment on YouTube.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we thought it might be a fun thing just to add some complexity to our possibly 7th, maybe 6th, also maybe 8th. I don't even know anymore. Season of this year thing. Very excited.
Adding complexity to our already overburdened lives.
Yes.
And if
Yep.
we have a hotline and you call in and leave a message, we can hopefully play the voice memos as part of the recording. It'd be fun. You can
And
hear
you can
yourself
hear
on our
your
podcast.
own voice. Yeah, exactly. What a great day.
Yeah. So did I miss this conversation in Slack? Because this is like
Yes.
oh, okay. Like
You
this
just
is like
ignore
very
us.
Awkward. Awkward.
yes, I'm in the
So-
loop of all things Y2AM. Yes, totally.
So Steve, you've actually been voted off the podcast. We wanted to bring in.
This is the real intervention.
And he's blank.
Enough.
He's blank. We lost him.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know
that's
what
a fun
to tell
idea.
you. When you, as the captain of this ship, stop paying attention, there's just usually mutiny, obviously led by Christian.
The most laid back mutineer of them all.
Fortunately, I love the X-Men.
Okay,
Well,
so what
please-
else is going to be new this season, though? We have other ways that other voices might be heard, other than our hotline that Steve didn't know about.
Yes, let's try.
Well,
Steve.
somebody else talk about this because I might not know about this either.
Well, our goal, I think we all thought, wouldn't it be fun to mix things up after how many ever seasons we've done of this, to invite some of our friends to be on this podcast with us. Some people that we know in the Orthodox world, maybe some people that we hang out with at coffee hours who might join us for some of these virtual coffee hours to tell us what they think about things and stuff that they watch and read and listen to and all that jazz, which I think is going to be so fun.
I don't know that, do I?
I don't know what any of this is, and I'm scared.
So no, this is actually a fun idea. So at the beginning of every season, at the end of every season, the four of us always get back together for a big mega episode. But we're going to be doing kind of our little sort of sub panels, and then we'll come back together for mega episodes at some point. But yeah, maybe like when Christian and I gather for an episode on alternate Wednesdays, we'll invite a third person on. When Christina and Emma gather for an episode, like they'll have a third person on. So I think it's cool because like we'll figure it out, right? Maybe people who are particularly passionate about a thing that we're doing that week, right? And like have something really interesting to say. So stay tuned. We're being creative.
And for the people who will be joining our calls, Emma and I will be requiring both male and female to bring their headscarves. Will be required participation.
Wow.
Hicks or it didn't happen.
Also, we don't record on video, so no one would ever know.
Are you wearing your headscarf? I totally am. Blink once if yes, twice if no. Did you just blink twice? Yes. I mean, no.
She said LMAO, but I doubt that.
Steve, you were just ripe with little asides here today.
I'm being pop culture-y. Yeah,
you are.
But that's going to be fun. So yeah, this is our season premiere. Next Wednesday, I think. Who's the next episode? Next Wednesday.
I think it's you guys.
We have to consult the spreadsheet then. If we're confused about that
spreadsheet, it might be us. Whatever. The girls are doing Gilmore Girls whenever our episode is happening, and you guys are doing what for your first episode?
Invincible.
Ooh. So there you go. People can look forward to those coming out in an order.
Yeah. Today's are only Monday in order. Yes.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. But it'll be Wednesdays. New, like Christian and I will do like the live streams on YouTube every Wednesday, and then on alternate Wednesdays, the Headscarf Mafia will come out with their new audio episodes, as we did in past seasons. Monday, we're doing our season premiere today because it just kind of worked this week.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
Wednesdays,
True.
remember Wednesdays.
There you go.
True that.
Yeah. I don't know. Any other stuff since the last time we got together? Updates, announcements?
Emma moved.
I did.
Again?
Yes, again.
Huzzah.
Yes, I live in Alabama again, but in a different place in Alabama. So that was exciting.
You did it.
Yeah, it
Yay.
was stressful, but we did it.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
I don't really have any cool OCF updates. What have you guys got?
I moved my desk to a different wall in my office.
Wow.
Wow.
We're just doing great today. This is, and I'm gonna stop listening right now.
That's exactly what all 13
I am
people
putting
listening just
this
said.
on double speed right now. Just double speed. At least 1.5 times.
Oh, that's the way you should always listen to podcasts, for the record. I stand by that. But
Do you go double or 1.5?
I approach double, depends on the podcast. Sometimes I double, but more of like a 1.6, 1.7. Yeah. Anyway, actual thing that happened during the course of the summer. We put together our first ever effective Christian ministry cohort. So this online course that we've talked about for the last couple of years, we got together a learning community of parishes, and not just parishes, actually, one bishop and his diocesan clergy as well, for this 9-month process to learn the practices and principles of effective Christian ministry, to come together and brainstorm ways to affect their parishes. We started at the very beginning of September, just earlier this month, with our first summit. And we're going to have monthly summits and webinars and coaches who are going to help these teams through the process. And it's going to go September through May. And if your parish was not in a position to join us, don't worry, because we're going to do it again next year too. But it's super exciting. Christian gave a talk at our first one, which was really lovely. Dr. Andy Root, whose books we have read and enjoyed, gave a talk, which was lovely. We had a young adult share her story, which was really cool. Just like this very, very honest sort of expression of doubts and struggles, which I don't know. It was good. The whole thing top to bottom was good. We have a great director. We have great coaches. We have really engaged teams that are part of this. It's just, thank God, it's good stuff. And I moved my desk.
That's the really important thing. Other than that, yeah, it's kind of where we're at. Should we get to the goodness?
Should we talk about?
Are we missing anything?
Culture.
Well, that's it, everybody. Just wanted to give you guys an update on Steve's desk.
Look, we haven't done an update of Christian's bikes in a long time, right? And the viewers miss that.
I wish that there was some way that I could cue really sad music right now. Some sort of single violin.
Maybe in the audio edit later, but we're live, so probably not right now.
Its tire is flat.
What?
It's been flat all summer, but it's summer here still. It is summer here still.
Here too.
Where's here? Tempe.
Yeah. Was it 100?
Yeah, but Alabama's not like the same level of agony, right?
No, that's true. I moved out of that 100-degree heat, which is very interesting because people in northern Alabama where I live have been like very offended when we're like, oh yeah, it's like a lot cooler here. They're like, no, it's really not. And we're like, no, it is. They're like, yeah, but the humidity. And we're like, no, like 120 to like 80.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, no, but it's way worse. It's way worse. It's way worse here though. So
eventually we were just like, oh yeah, it's so hot here.
Good grief. You should just like tap them on their heads and say, you're just very cute. You're cute. You're really, really cute.
You and your humidity.
Yeah. You're cute and lukewarm, relatively speaking.
Isn't that one of those places when you say, bless your heart?
Oh, there you go. That's it. Nailed it.
Gotta get your southern.
Them's fighting words.
Well, shall we?
Yes,
shall we what?
Talk about some stuff.
I'm already tired.
Me too.
Maybe we started. Start talking.
What are we talking about this week, though? On the season premiere of the 7th season of Pop Culture Coffee Hour.
We are going to talk about the Disney Plus series, Loki.
Is that your staff?
I was excited. I don't know. You guys were all pretty relatively unmoved by that. I expected at least like a
Woo.
I don't know.
Woohoo.
Or even just a wow.
Wow.
I didn't know that's what we were talking about. I feel very panicked. Okay.
I feel so underprepared.
Let's do a summary, Steve. Let's do it.
Well, before we get there, because we are in spoiler territory.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like it is normal to unleash the spoiler porg at a time like this, but because one of the characters is played by the indomitable Owen Wilson, I kind of feel like a spoiler wow would be more apropos under current circumstances. So buyer beware, we are entering into spoiler territory. Would somebody like to unleash the spoiler wow?
I just try to give you one. I'll try to give it again.
Sounded like a hoarse whisper.
Listen.
It was the ASMR version. You
Beggars
can't
can't
help
be
it.
choosers.
All right. Well, with that.
Okay. So we've been spoiler wowed. We're now in spoiler territory because it is new. It's out there. But anyway, here we go. Loki in a nutshell. So the series starts, for those of you, unlike Emma, who are familiar with the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe, this starts at the Battle of New York, which you see in one of the many Avengers movies. And Loki escapes the Battle of New York when the Avengers come back in time to sort of fix things right in Endgame, and he escapes with the Tesseract, but he doesn't get away. He is swiftly apprehended by this thing called the TVA, which is the Time Variance Authority. And the TVA exists to protect the integrity of what's called the sacred timeline. And what they do that by catching these things called variants, who are like people who are versions of you, but who move the timeline in an unacceptable direction, because there's like the sacred timeline that has to be kept sacred at all costs. And what they do this by pruning these Christians. They do
I don't know
this.
why that was funny, but it was.
Look, I can say it, even if I can't spell it. So they prune these dangerous variants, okay, with an A, not an E. They prune them, they make them go away, right? And the weird thing about the TVA is that we thought that Thanos with his Infinity Stones is like the greatest force in the universe. No, apparently this is an even greater force. People use Infinity Stones as paperweights in the TVA. I mean, what is going on here? And they recruit Loki to hunt the most dangerous variant of all, who is a version of Loki himself. And he works with Mobius, played by Owen. Wow, that was a terrible wow. Wilson. But this variant, right, that's out there that they're trying to get, it turns out it's Lady Loki, whose name is Sylvie. And Loki kind of falls for her, which is this weird sort of like narcissistic, solipsistic sort of thing that we'll talk about later. But she helps him realize that the TVA doesn't create its agents, but scoops them out of the timeline. So they're lying, and people are upset that the TVA is lying. But then Loki is pruned as he confronts them, and he wakes up in the void at the end of time, which is guarded by this giant sort of shadowy thing called Alioth. And there's, Sylvie, who cares for Loki, Lady Loki cares for Loki, follows Loki into the void, and they defeat Alioth to find the Citadel at the end of time. And then He Who Remains, who is Kang the Conqueror, who is another sort of like Marvel figure, is the force behind the TVA. And he tells them the real story of how the TVA happened, because versions of him, he was like a scientist in the 31st century, made contact between the timelines, and that led to like a multiversal war. And he ended the multiversal war by forming the TVA to create this one sacred timeline and stop the different versions of everything. And he offers Loki and Lady Loki a choice to either rule the TVA, to ensure order, or to kill him and unleash chaos. And Sylvie pushes Loki through a portal, and she kills Him Who Remains, and everything seems fine for a while. But then Loki walks out, and he's talking to Owen Wilson, and he doesn't recognize him because he's in a new timeline. And he looks, and he sees a giant statue of He Who Remains, and cliffhanger, because we don't know what's happening in season 2, but things got messy.
Now you don't even have to watch the show.
That was the most thorough summary of all time.
It all felt important.
Yeah. You said it with the conviction of someone who just watched it.
Steve, I just taught my 7th graders how to summarize. If you would like to come to middle school, we'll start with the question words. Who is this show about? What did that person do?
Sorry, it was too long.
I feel so much shame on the inside right now.
It was so good. You did such a good effort.
It was very thorough. It was
so thorough.
Good effort is the saddest thing ever. Good effort.
I will say the difference between you and the middle schoolers was that it wasn't just a continuous and then. Yes. I appreciated the pauses and the sentences.
I didn't lose my breath in the middle of telling this thing. Yes.
Oh, I might have.
Yeah,
okay.
It was good. Good. All right, so
I'm going to stop talking for a moment.
What do you guys think about this? I really would love to hear your takes on it. Christina, we'll start with you.
Of course you will. I think of the 3 Disney Plus series, right? It's 3. WandaVision and what's the middle one? I get all the words mixed up.
Exactly.
The second one.
No, exactly.
Also,
that's what it's called. What was that second one?
I feel about it. Yeah. And this is definitely my favorite of the 3 so far. I've been like most on board with like the characters and the concept. And so in spite of being a person who has watched all of the Marvel Universe multiple times, as I feel like I've probably said before, like they don't stick. I just forget what I've seen like immediately after I've seen it. So to be fair, me connecting it to other pieces of the Marvel Universe is not really going to happen or be helpful, but I did enjoy the experience of watching it while it was happening and then promptly forgot most of it.
Sure. That's fine.
Go. Yeah.
That's fine. Maybe there's some like alternate timeline you that remembers the majority of the things that you've seen.
That can like remember even the names of the characters.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Mobius and Mobius.
Yeah.
Emma,
Yeah, I
what'd you
had to
think
watch
about
the
it?
like, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Yep. Go ahead. You talk.
I have not watched like anything Marvel except Wonder Woman when we did Wonder Woman, which Steve told me isn't even really Marvel. So and I think I watched one Captain America movie because my husband wanted to watch it and I was like, sure. And then I like didn't pay attention. So this is pretty much it.
You have
and I
no
was
idea how many nerd boys' hearts you just destroyed. When
I know,
You said,
well,
I
I
haven't
was-
seen any Marvel except for Wonder Woman.
I was talking
Everyone was like,
was FaceTiming with my brother and I was like, so like, have you watched like this Loki thing? Like, is that on Disney Plus? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, should I watch it? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, but I haven't watched like anything Marvel. And then he just hung up on me. I was like, okay. So I will say, as a total Marvel, I don't know, ignorant person, I did enjoy this. I watched it on my hurricane day when we had off for Hurricane Ida. So I just kind of hunkered down in the drizzle and watched Loki all day. And I really liked it. Like, I didn't find myself being like, I'm like force myself to go through it. I thought the characters were interesting. I do think that like the whole time, like other alternate universes, like is kind of something that I like. Like my favorite book is about time travel. So I enjoyed it. But I was like texting my brothers the whole time. I was like, is Loki good or bad? I was like, I can't keep up with what's going on. And I was like, who is this person? And I was like, isn't this in mythology? And they're like, yeah, just watch it. Just stop.
little did you know, Emma, that you had stumbled on the core question behind Loki.
I know. Apparently I don't even have
Is
to watch
Loki
the
good or
series
bad?
to know.
And who is this person?
Yeah.
That is indeed.
Look at that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I really enjoyed it too. It took me a little bit to get into. I think like the first episode was maybe kind of like not terribly gripping. I don't know. But once I was in, I was in. I do enjoy the ongoing project of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I am starting to get a little tired, I think. You know, like I felt like, didn't we already commit to 20 plus films over the last 10 years? And now it just seems like Disney Plus is doubling down on all of the things all the time. You know, it's like, okay, now we're getting into like TV series with like hour-long episodes, and it just feels like a lot of commitment, and starting to feel like a real clingy girlfriend, this MCU thing. It's just calling all the time, calling a lot.
I don't really like that metaphor. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Clingy boyfriend?
I have a problem with that whole concept, but that's a whole nother podcast.
A person experiencing clinginess.
All right.
That's fair. I share a little bit of that. Like, I think they're a part of me. So I enjoyed it very much. It was fun. Tom Hiddleston is very charming. He does a really wonderful job as Loki, right? It was very cast very well. Owen Wilson did his thing, talked about his jet ski, right? It just kind of, it hit very well and satisfying. But there is a part of me that's like, okay, they built this very complicated, complex cinematic universe, but one universe is no longer enough. Now we're in this world of endless possibilities, and your mind is going to be bent, and the things that you thought you knew don't matter anymore. And there's a Loki who has like the weird convoluted like yellow horns, and there's like a kid Loki, and then there's like an alligator Loki, which is just weird, right? Because how do you tell if he's Loki? He's green, I suppose. I don't know. It's a lot, but this was good. This was good. There is that moment of like, resistance to everything that is going to follow this.
How many nice dinners am I going to have to take you out to?
I also the whole time
isn't that how?
Oh, sorry. The whole time I just kept thinking about the timeline episode from Community, and so that was like what I was comparing like the entire series to,
which remains to this day the best sort of like timeline anything ever, I think.
Yes, definitely. Well,
but isn't this like how like comic books kept going in general? Is they came up with some bizarre reason that someone either came back from the dead, or you could like reset their story and start again. So it does like seem to fit within the genre, whether it's annoying or not, right?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Did you guys ever watch the show Heroes by any chance? So there was this show on NBC called Heroes, and season 1 was fantastic, and season 2 was okay, and season 3 was a mess. And like the show had characters that just like couldn't die, but somehow it turned out that every character also couldn't die. And so then when people were like, back when memes were first becoming a thing on the internet, they would take like some logos of, or like the kind of the images of the different television shows and retitle them to make it what the show should actually be called. And they took the Heroes logo and in the Heroes type font put "No one ever dies." And that was exactly what the show. It was like nothing, there's no cost, there's nothing at stake here, you know, like everybody just keeps going forever. And that is a little bit, I think, what this is starting to feel like. Like, didn't Loki die? Also, didn't Black Widow die? And now there's a Black Widow movie? It's all just very confusing to me. I never saw that one because, again, now I'm starting to feel like it's asking a lot.
But they're enjoyable. But that's like, and that's the tension, right? Like when you're in the experience, they definitely know how to make an enjoyable piece of pop culture, which we can mine for, I think, interesting stuff, right? Because they are asking sort of like good questions, and the performances are like fun, and like it is good. But when you step back, it's like you were enjoying a piece of candy, and then you sort of walk away, and you know you're still hungry. Was that a better metaphor than the clingy girlfriend? Is that better?
Yes.
Clingy piece of candy.
Redeemed from the summary.
I don't know about that.
Well, let's get into it. So I think, Emma, you touched on this and just in your kind of reaction to the whole thing, but one of the big questions I do think that is facing this series is that of identity. I mean, and this is, I think, something we always come back to in pop culture in different ways. But I think there's actually some really interesting takes on it here with that kind of like the overarching question of what is a Loki? Like that to me seems to be one of the big things that's framing the show and trying to kind of discover all of the different aspects of that. So I guess I just want to set us up with that question. What is a Loki?
Someone who is doomed to lose.
I think that's what the show says, right?
Yeah. There's like a very kind of tragic take on it, right? Like there's very self-hating sort of moment where what does the classic Loki call him? Instead of the god of mischief, he's the god of outcasts, because it's just the sort of like the losers who constantly get the short end of the stick. And unlike the victorious Thor, it's the Loki. So there's two layers to it, right? There's almost like there's the identity of Loki, but there's also the felt sense of being Loki, because there's just so much outcastedness and loneliness and doubt and need, right? That's kind of wrapped up in this character as well, that is expressed in such a variety of different ways. The desire for attention, which comes through in the mischief, the feeling of fatality, that no matter what I do, it always loses. I have this desire to rule on the throne, but I can't even, put a plan together or whatever it is. Like it's a complicated thing. Maybe no one knows what a Loki is.
That's a big thing. That is a big thing. But it does seem to me to kind of like just touch on just a general question of like identity at large, right? Like that identity, and this is what I don't really understand, because there's some level, right, where like the Lokis are all the same, but they're also all different. And to that end, like there's this kind of like core kind of thing where identity seems to be given, but also is affected by choices or these kind of like variants to the timeline, right? Like there's this, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's like identity is this kind of like set of characteristics, but they play out differently depending on the choices. But it seems to me like our identity is formed by the choices that we make, because there clearly is something different between like, you know, the Loki that we follow who ends up in the void versus kind of like the Loki who's running for like mayor of the void. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about?
President
like,
who gets his hand chopped off. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like there's something qualitatively different between those two Lokis, and yet they're still both Lokis. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to think about like the interplay between what is given as identity and what we choose for ourselves as identity, and how, I mean, maybe there is in it. I don't know. Is there an interplay? I don't know.
But I think like if the show wanted to make the point that it's 100% our choices that create our identity, then like every Loki would have looked exactly the same. And just like had different choices that then led him on a bunch of different paths. And then when you got to the void and they all came together, it would have been all the same looking Loki, right? Like I think it's interesting that the Lokis take different forms, because you even kind of see that between Sylvie and Loki, since they have the most interaction and dialogue, how she kind of touches on like, well, since I'm a girl, these are the things that have happened to me versus like what happened to you because you're boy Loki. So that's kind of not even within our control. That's what we've been given.
Yeah, the alligator doesn't have a lot to say on that point, but that's fair. I hadn't thought of that.
I think other Loki's hand would disagree about that.
I mean, I kind of get the sense of this like platonic view of identity, you know, that there's some kind of form for Lokiness, which each of these Lokis participate in. It's not totally clear what that is, except for if maybe it's that you are like you said, set to be the one who fails, or who's thwarted.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the thing that's interesting about this multiverse concept is that it explores something that's not possible to explore in reality. So it's like already in some ways, I don't know, removed from reality. So I'm curious what you think it's telling us about reality by giving us a glimpse of the variance, I guess.
See, you know, your mind went to the like platonic forms when you were thinking about what identity is. The thing that struck me, and maybe there's different angles of talking about the same thing, was like there seems to be a pretty constant like web of relationships that define who Loki is. Like even when we see the different sort of like forms of Loki, right? Whether it's male or female, whether it's humanoid or not humanoid, classic or whatever. Like Odin is his dad, right? Freya is his mom, right? Thor is his older brother. And the choices that the different Lokis make are kind of in like, that's kind of a given. Whatever Loki is, like those are kind of like the broad outlines. But you know, the choices that shape that character, right? Like one of the most stark choices is when he meets Kid Loki late in the season. Like, you know, why is it that you're ruling here? Because Kid Loki killed Thor. Right, which like the Loki that we have come to know and love like would never be able to do, and I'm not even sure that he would want to do potentially either, right? But like here's a version like that did this at a very young age, and it's just this like murderous little child, right? And a very core like relationship and a part of who he is has been like severed by him. So I wonder if that's like though the contours of those relationships like in some way kind of define the parameters of like whatever that like Lokiness is, but then that becomes the lines in which to color, right? And they could be like they're going to be colored differently by like boy Loki versus girl Loki, because they're going to sort of experience relationships with those people differently, right? The longing for parents, right? Whatever it might be. And it's like what happens inside the boundaries is like the interesting thing, right? But there's like a givenness too, even if we can't put our finger on it, right? Like we all kind of have a sense of what Loki is, whether it's like a form or relationships, but it's like what happens within those boundaries. That's like the interesting stuff.
So you're bringing up like a really kind of, like Zazulian kind of like idea right here of like what constitutes personhood, right? That like it's something that's constituted within communion, right? Like communion as our being, as like our form of ontology. And I guess like what I wonder is like, because I really love what you're saying. Where are you going? I miss you. Yeah, I've got mine over there somewhere. It's fine. Like the idea that somehow like a Loki is defined in relation to Odin, Thor, Freya, like all of this kind of stuff. Like there's a lot that to me seems like, okay, so there is this being as gift, right? Like it is something that is just given based on the family, the circumstances, the whatever, right? Like that is who you are, is like where you're brought into. And it maybe even has less to do with things like boy, girl, black, white, whatever. Like it's much more like that is a much more real and substantive way to define who we are, is that like network of, because there are so many different ways of looking at these different Lokis, right? Like, I don't know. It's just an interesting way to think about it. And so I guess then what I would wonder is like, so what are the ways in which girlness or boyness or alligatorness or blackness or whiteness or whatever do impact our identity kind of within those confines that you've even brought up? It's a really interesting idea to me. I'm really excited about this. I love that you brought this up. Cool.
I wonder if those are so here's another like maybe image that's coming to mind as we think about this, right? If those are just kind of different colored lenses through which we experience that web of relationship or that identity, right? Because like to use kind of like the silly extreme example, a human being is going to interpret and experience the world differently than an alligator is, right? It's that like, like even if it's that sort of like Wittgenstein thing, right? Even if a lion like knew like the English language, you'd never be able to communicate because a lion's experience of reality and a human's experience of reality are like clean different things. But maybe that's part of it, right? Like these are the lenses through which because we're all finite beings, right? Wrestling with the complexities of creation. And there's just a particular angle or a particular filter that sort of shapes that, right? The stark example between being human being and alligator, but like even male, female, right? I feel like, we experience the world sort of differently. Different kind of abilities, right? Like, the different things about us, which lead to different reactions from other people, different sort of sensory abilities, different cognitive abilities, different whatever, just like different lenses. Like that identity might be the same, but to riff on it even more, right? If everything's essence is this like just deep mystery, right? The way that we experience the depth of that mystery is going to be kind of like limited, right? As we try to sort of like delve into this mystery, and we just kind of experience the depth and complexity of that through different sort of partial angles or different ways. And an alligator is going to experience that depth of that differently than a human being is going to experience a depth of that,
right,
and relate to it differently.
But to your original point about being as communion, and also even maybe to mine about like platonic forms, I feel like the confines within which we experience things through our own lenses is our relationship with Christ, our participation, to use like the Platonic way of talking about it, right? Our participation in the human being in Christ. So the core identity of what it means to be human is participation in Christ, like participation in the human being. And it is by nature relational as well. Like it is within within a real relationship. I feel like participation is such like a weird, cloudy philosophical word when you're talking about like a table participating in the form of tableness, but but like when you're talking about participation of a person in the personhood of Christ, like in that relationship, it's very physical and substantial because you have the Eucharist, and we have all these images in scripture, right, of the vine and the branches and the body being led by the head, and I don't know, the high priest and the royal priesthood. That those are kind of the boundaries, I guess, like you said, like the lines within which we color, but we can choose our own colors. And some of that might have to do with the box of crayons we have or we don't have. Like some of it is still given, to Christian's point, but like the core of the identity does have this Loki-ness to it for us, like that there is a humanity in which we participate that is given and participated in and common to all of us.
Yeah. No, I totally, I think that makes sense. And
So
and even to riff on that participation, we participate to the extent that we're able, right, at a particular moment to participate. As we grow, we're able to hopefully to participate more, but even like participation will look different at different places. But I think I cut you off, Christian. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I don't have anything important to say anyway. It's fine. But no, I guess like one of the big questions for me that's been coming up lately over and over and over again, kind of vis-a-vis like, church and participation in all of like, the sacramental like realities and all of this kind of stuff. And it may sound a little crass, but it's the best way that I can think of to ask it, is just like, so that what? Like, so what? So like I participate in Christ, so what? So what will happen for me? So what will happen in the world? So that, so what? Like that really is kind of, and this makes it sound like I'm just very much like, who cares? But I don't feel that way. But there's been a lot of conversations where I've had with people lately where they'll say things that are kind of like, Orthodox buzzwords. And I'm appreciative of their catechesis for giving them that language. But to me, it seems like there's it seems like half of a baseball swing, baseball bat swing, baseball swing. That is a weird
baseball
combination of words that I don't think I've ever said like that. It is a weird combination of a swing that is experiencing a baseball. And I don't know, like it just seems like half of the swing. Like, so I participate in Christ, and like that's me hitting, like making contact with the ball, but then ultimately it's to put the ball in play. So I guess like what I wonder about is like, what does it look like then as we come to the Eucharist, as we participate in this kind of, mystical reality or kind of touch Loki-ness and participate in Loki-ness? What does it look like for us then as the people of God for the ball to be in play? Does that make any sense?
I mean, I'm not totally sure if it makes sense. Maybe, what do you think the answer to that question is?
Well, I'm asking it. You don't get to say that to me. I'm asking the question.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, like, so what? Like, yeah, like I get it. Like, we participate in the human being, and we go and we take communion and whatever, and like, like, so what?
Yeah. Maybe there's a couple of ways to address this, right? And the one that's coming to my mind as I think about this, it relates to just the kind of, we were dancing around the depth of identity and the sort of cloudiness of identity, the mystery of it, right? The essence of a particular thing. I was actually talking about this over the weekend with Father Panayotti, because I was hanging out with him in Chicago, and we were talking about the ladder of divine descent, as we do sometimes. And there's the step on prayer, right? And we're sort of observing that the step on prayer is just like one of the shorter chapters in that particular work, because St. John is sort of realizing, like, I can teach you like how to pray, but I can't necessarily like describe for you what the fruit of prayer is. Like, what does it actually mean to have that sort of like connection? Even to use like the baseball metaphor, right? Like I can maybe mechanically explain what it is for a ball to be in play, but I don't know that I can necessarily convey with language the excitement of seeing a double play, right? Or seeing a home run at the bottom of the ninth inning or whatever it is. Like at what point do our descriptions of these things even fall flat? Like you have to you've got to play ball if you're going to understand what it is for the ball to be in play. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, I guess what I'm saying is it's like there's like even in the baseball metaphor, which I know is a broken one, but it's the best one that I had on hand, so I apologize. Like there's a very clear purpose to participating in that game, right? It's like you get up to bat, you hit the ball, you put it into play ultimately so that you can score, right? Like that's the whole purpose, is like to go around the bases, score runs, points, goals,
touchdowns,
goals to score touchdowns. You go around the bases to score touchdowns and form a hat trick, and then you I understand things. But for me, I guess like what I wonder about is what then does it look like for us as Christians to run around the bases and ultimately come home? Like if that's kind of the thing, is because I don't know, it just like I've heard a lot of kind of just different, like it's really important to come to church stuff. And I agree, it is important to go to church. But it's like when you hear over and over and over again, like come to church, come to church, come to church, and that kind of is all that you get about why is it important? It's like, well, because it's church. And so, okay, so what? Well, it's important to go to it because it's church. Why? Because there's communion.
It's important
here.
to come to it because it's the only place where you can be freed of all of the brokenness that you are contributing to the world that's making this place a really messed up place. It's the only place where you can be freed of that, so that you can then be the presence of Christ, a bearer of the kingdom, a person who offers a taste of what it is like to have no pain or sorrow or sighing in the world. Like, I mean, I don't know, to be made whole so that then you can offer light and wholeness to others.
But what does that look like or mean, I guess, is what I keep coming back to, right? Like that to me is the big question of like, how do we participate in that, not just on Sundays, but on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, right? Like to be a person who brings that kind of light and wholeness, and to be the kind of person in the world who goes into a world filled with sorrow.
I think this is interesting in the context of the show, because to me, like main character Loki was the most Loki of the Lokis. But at the same time, in the show, he was the one who was most like, what is a Loki? Because if you looked at like Sylvie, she was like, I am Loki and no one's going to hurt me and I'm going to destroy everyone and everything. So like, that makes me Loki. And then like Alligator Loki was just kind of like, blah. And Kid Loki was like, I don't care about anyone, so I'm going to kill my brother because I'm, merciless, bloodthirsty Loki. But the Loki of the Lokis, main character Loki, was the one who was actually like, but what does this mean? What does it mean to be a Loki? What does it mean to do these things? So I think that like asking these questions isn't necessarily something that's wrong. I think that it's actually good because it's causing you to kind of reflect and be like, am I the fullness of what I think I am or what I should be? So I don't know if they even need to be answered like right now, like here's my like elevator pitch on what it means to be Orthodox and go to church on Sunday and also be that when you're not at church. But kind of like that exploration that we see in the show of Loki trying to figure out, well, what does it even mean to be a Loki, is a journey each of us have to take individually. Like something my dad has started saying a lot in his sermons that my brothers and I are like starting to make fun of him for because he keeps saying it so much is like, my reality is not your reality, right? So the way that Loki experiences and defines Lokiness is going to mean something different for him than it is for Sylvie or Alligator Loki or Kid Loki.
Yeah. And we have space for that because we don't have kind of like a wiping away of the individual personality or experience. We don't all have one way of answering the so what question, I think. We have one I think path maybe is the right word. We have like one kind of path for unfolding what your answer is supposed to be that we share. And that's the liturgy, that's the Eucharist, that's communion with Christ. And then how that actually unfolds and what it means for each of us to go back into the world and put the ball in play is going to look different. And I think it's intended to be that way.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of the more interesting points of Loki, right? Because the way that you said some of that, Christina, made me feel, I thought a lot about the sacred timeline. Like this has been such a fun show to think about. And I feel like ultimately, right, that the liturgy is the unveiling of the sacred timeline. Like ultimately, like that is like if we were gonna say like what is the liturgy vis-a-vis Loki terminology, I would say it is the revelation, the unveiling, the apocalyptic moment where we get to see where the sacred timeline is headed. And it all points to he who remains, right? Like that is ultimately where all of it leads. But there's so many other questions to that. And I want to I don't know. I want to not geek out right now because I'm really excited about a lot of the stuff with time and like free will and predestination and like all of that stuff. That just, I don't want to get too lost on like the what is a Loki thing, which I do feel like is important, but I feel like it may be answered throughout the course of like talking about like the sacred timeline and stuff like that too.
Yeah. Well, I think that I'll offer, because I think it may tie a couple of threads from, what the three of you guys said, that I think the one of the things that makes main character Loki so interesting is that he sees his Loki-ness as inherently bound up with other people, right? He's the one who's willing to sort of forge partnerships with the others. He's the one who's willing to like lay down the desire for a throne, right? Like that sort of that conversation at the very end where he's like, I don't want the throne. I just want to know that you're okay, which he says to Sylvie, right? Like he is the one Loki who sees his Loki-ness as being bound up in others, right? He is the one Loki who actually like wants to play the game with other people rather than just take his ball and go home. Which I think is like, which gives color to the timeline, right? That the timeline is not just this like sequence of events, but is like the whole timeline, right? And is Loki there with everybody else who constitute the timeline. And maybe we can sort of like push into a little bit of well, but like, I don't know. I think that's one of the most interesting things about like why he's such a lovable character. He's like, he in some ways transcends his Loki-ness by like, he asks those questions. But he like, I don't know, he becomes the best of the Lokis because he's actually willing to like leave his throne to the side so that Lady Loki, because he wants to know that Lady Loki is okay. And I keep saying Lady Loki because I like alliteration. That's really what it is at the end of the day. But there's something really beautiful about that moment with Sylvie, which nobody else does, right? He was actually like happy to just be there with her, right? Just to play ball. I don't know. And it's lovely. And it is compelling, right? Like what exactly that means to be in that moment, to be in this kind of like river of things that leads to, this weird perversion of an alpha and omega, right? I mean, we could talk about how that comes across in the show versus like, the one who actually remains, and those who are with him, but it definitely does get weird and wacky.
But I think we shall all agree that when Loki asks if any of you ever encountered a female Loki variant, and they go, no, sounds terrifying. And she goes, oh, she is. that moment was fantastic. Oh, she is. Yeah.
I mean, she is.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess what I want to shift gears a little bit because I do want to talk about the intersection of like time and all of this different kind of stuff and like free will, predestination, how all of that fits into this kind of like sacred timeline thing, because I think those are some of the big questions otherwise that are brought up, like once they encounter King the Conqueror, right? Where he's like, I just laid out the path and you guys walked it and basically couldn't help it. And it's like, that's a pretty terrifying reality to think about finding ourselves within, where we have kind of no choice. I mean, that's basically like John Calvin's God, right? Where it's like, you're like, really, right? Where he creates some for honor and some for dishonor, and that's just scary. So yeah, I guess I want to maybe shift into that. Is it okay if we talk about that? Because I know we've only got like a little bit of time left, so I don't want to miss our opportunity for some really cool multiverse stuff.
And like, and maybe the question, because that's a big topic, right? Like, do we want to hit this from the angle of like what freedom is in the first place, right? Because I think that's one of the questions that the different Lokis struggle with in different ways, right? Freedom for kid Loki is getting rid of his brother, right? Freedom for original Loki, right? Loki classic is to be king and to rule. Like that's really what freedom is at the end of the day, to have all people subjected to him. Like it's interesting that he becomes this like champion of free will at the end of season 1, whereas at the very beginning of season 1, his desire is to be the only one who is like calling the shots in the universe, right? Like right. Freedom. What's the thing that the judge, Mobius's boss, says, like only the one on top can be free or something, that other kind of like very terrifying comment. Like there are like a lot of wacky visions of what freedom is in this show. And they're mostly like oppressive or self-indulgent or terrifying, right? To your point, but like there's so many bad visions of what freedom is. Maybe we need like a better vision of what freedom is.
Yeah, so freedom is a really interesting thing, because the way that I've almost like thought about it, I mean, I feel like we do tend to think about it as like unlimited possibility. Like I can do whatever I want, be whatever I want. And I mean, this is kind of like the big mythos that we've all participated in since being kids, of like, you can be whatever you want when you grow up. And that's just not true. You can't be whatever you want. Like that is a lie that has been devised. And in the same way, right, that like me having a body, like if I want to move freely, there are limits, and there are moves that I can make and moves that I can't make, right? Like if I want to touch my toes, there is a very clear way that I can do that, where I will bend forward and reach down and touch my toes. I cannot reach backwards over my head all the way around, try to touch my toes. That actually is painful, and it's not freedom. I'm free to try to do that, but it's ultimately going to lead to a thing that says don't do that anymore. So to move freely is actually, in some ways, I think, to move with our nature, right? Like it's actually to move according to the way that we have been created, and according to like the things that do in fact constrain and confine us in some capacity. Like when we move against what those things are, then we run into danger, right? Like if you want to hug yourself, if I said hug yourself, you would naturally like wrap your arms in front of you. You wouldn't try to hug yourself from around. Like it would just be a very weird thing, and painful and harmful to the way your body actually works. And you'd probably throw out your back, as I have been known to do on multiple occasions in my life. But that's my take on freedom in some capacity. I don't know if that gets the conversation started, but
well, I think that's an interesting, a way to frame it, right? Because and even that challenges the way that we sometimes think about freedom, because I think we tend to think about freedom in this very sort of binary way, as either you're completely 100% free in this like massively unconstrained sort of way and can do whatever the heck you want whenever the heck you want it, or you have no freedom at all. Whereas you're offering something that's kind of like, I don't know, a point on that spectrum, right? Like freedom for a human being is going to be different than freedom for, I don't know, some other creature, potentially. Freedom for one of the bodiless powers, right? An angel or an archangel is going to be different than freedom for a human being. And all of that's going to be different than freedom for God, who's going to be free in the most absolute sense of the word. But like my freedom as a human being is like the freedom to be human, not the not the freedom to be something else, right? Because I think that's one of the to maybe like riff on this a little bit more. I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of people are confused or uninterested in the idea of like an eternity with God in the kingdom, right? Like that seems like incredibly boring to some people, or seems very confining. Like you can't sin anymore in heaven. Like, isn't that very boring, or whatever it is, as opposed to like, no, for the first time, possibly in your entire existence, you will be free to be you. And the stuff that you were talking about earlier, Christina, right? The brokenness that you sort of bring to the world, the things that make things up, like all of that stuff gets stripped away, right? And like you may not be free to like leap tall buildings in a single bound or do sort of like incredible sort of like, feats of whatever, but you're going to be free to love the people that you are actually called to love. And you're going to be free to be right. I mean, like, I don't know. And that's a compelling sort of thing that challenges the way that we talk about freedom sometimes.
My favorite book, The Time Traveler's Wife, obviously talks about this because the main character is a time traveler. So he has this whole discussion with his wife, shocker, about like free will and all that stuff. And
that's
he
3 words from the title.
Yes, exactly. It's a wonderful book. I suggest it to everyone. But he says, when they're talking about it, he says chaos is more freedom, in fact, total freedom, but no meaning. I want to be free to act, but I also want my actions to mean something. And I think that that's where the characters in Loki get confused between this thing of like, my actions mean something, but while having freedom, because to them, it seems like in order for their actions to mean something, they have to be the one at the top. And therefore that is freedom. But I think that what Henry, the character in Time Traveler's Wife, is saying is like, I don't want total freedom. I don't want that chaos. Anyone can do whatever they want all the time. I want meaning. So how do we find kind of the balance between meaning and freedom without having to be the one calling all the shots?
Yeah, I also feel like it's easy to I just caught in a total lie about freedom. Like, why do we think freedom to do whatever we want is actually freedom? I mean, have you ever tried it? It usually just ends up in a dark and scary place where you don't feel free at all. I mean, I don't know, like, I don't like even the idea of saying, oh, it's somewhere in between, like constraint or do whatever you want. Like, that doesn't make sense to me, because when you do whatever you want, you end up constrained. Like, this is like the very basic teaching about free. Yeah, you break your back. Like, it's not freedom to do whatever you want. It's just wreaking havoc. To your point, Emma, about it being chaos, like, if you do whatever you want, you actually end up with just chaos, which even
right. And I think too that like doing whatever you want doesn't have meaning, because usually when you're doing whatever you want, you're only thinking of yourself. And it's like, if we want to have meaning, if we want what we're doing with our freedom to have meaning, it needs to be kind of like circle back in relation to others.
Yeah. I think the best way I've ever heard this described was in like a conversation about, doing the will of God specifically. But I think it relates to this as well, where a priest was talking about that he used the image of like, you're standing in a room with, just say 2 doors to start. You're standing in a room with 2 doors, and one is good, one is God's way, and one is sin. You have a choice between them both, but when you choose in this room that only has 2 doors, the one that is God's way, you actually enter a room that now has 5 doors. And there's still a door that can be sin, but it's gotten smaller. But if you enter the room that is sin, you enter a room that now still only has 2 doors, but the room for choosing God's way has gotten smaller. And so it's much easier it's much easier to go through the door of sin or the door of your own passions or your own desires. And then you enter another room where now there's still only 2 doors, and the room for choosing God's way has gotten smaller. And so you end up where you always have choice. You do always have a way out, because God can work even in hell. But you become constrained by your choices to where there's really almost only one choice for you when you like enter through that first door in the first room. Whereas if you go through the other way, the possibilities for goodness actually keep multiplying. There's you can't run out of God's goodness or God's love or God's mercy or God's justice. Like, there are so many things about God that we can participate in. There are so many ways in which we can participate in God's life that are infinite, that the more we choose that way, actually the more choices that we have. And the less likely we are to choose the smaller, shrinking door of sin that could bind us. I feel like that's like a really helpful image for thinking about what we mean by freedom. We mean freedom to have infinite possibilities of goodness and beauty and truth. Christian's
only
really
real
excited about
possibility.
something. What does he want to
This is
say?
like, it's just all of it. This is just it's such a fun conversation to me. And like, I've been dying to have this conversation because I've been geeking out about it since I watched Loki. So this is just, it's just fun. All of it's fun. I'm just having fun. This is the look of someone having fun. This is what a fun person looks like right now. This is what a person experiencing funness looks like. Yeah, no, so this to me, like, it does, because like time and free will and predestination and whatever, like all the different kinds of just like balls that I feel like are sort of being juggled a little bit right now in this conversation. You know, I feel like I'm really going to do a terrible job threading the needle on this conversation right now, because there's so many things that are floating in my head. But the thing that I think that I want to kind of attach like maybe my comments to here are like the liturgy as, again, that kind of like apocalyptic or unveiling of that which is hidden event of the sacred timeline, right? Mm-hmm. Like there is one sacred timeline, mm-hmm. and that timeline is revealed in the divine liturgy. And it's an invitation into it, right? But what it shows, and this is my thought, is it shows the promise and the pledge of where everything is going no matter what, right? Like from the very beginning, blessed is the kingdom of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, now and forever, and unto the ages of ages. Amen, right? Like that's it. Everything is headed this one direction. And where does it finally culminate? In union with Christ, right? Everything is brought into union with Christ in this one moment. And that is it. Like there's nothing that we can do to escape that. It is like this river of time that is just headed toward that kind of like, you know, outlet into the ocean of like a union with God. And we can't do anything about it. The
inescapable embrace that St. Dionysius talks about.
Yes. Yeah. So I think like if we hold that in mind alongside of the question of choice, there is a big question for me of like, what kind of choice do we actually have? Like no matter what, it's going there. We've seen the end. We've seen where it goes. Mm-hmm. All of it is headed toward union with God. No matter what I do, no matter what you do, no matter what Steve does, no matter what phone calls I ignore tomorrow, whether or not I text my mom, like all of it is headed to union with God. So what kind of choice do I really have?
We have a choice to have eyes to see and ears to hear, and that's just about it. Like that's like the best part of the end of the last, not the best part, there's so many good things about the last battle, but right, like it's the dwarves are for the dwarves, and they literally are sitting in Aslan's kingdom, and they just are like, everything stinks, and you know, they cannot see it. They can only because in their bitterness towards the chaos of the end times, they've closed themselves off to any reality outside of just the dwarves are for the dwarves. They literally are participating in Aslan's kingdom and also get left behind when everyone goes further up and further in.
They're in a hell of their own making, yes. Right? Like they've made their own hell. They're like they're not like Aslan hasn't sent them to hell. Mm-mm. Like they're in a hell of their own devising.
Yeah. He gives them a feast by the intercessions of one of the saints, right? Like by Lucy asking, please let them see, and he's like, little one, they can't, but he does it anyway. He gives them the feast, and there's nothing there for them.
Yeah, because they receive heaven as mm-hmm. hell, right? Which I think is, it's one of the consequences of, if God is as like perfect and sort of steadfast as he is, right? He's like the same, he pours out the same blessings upon us all. Some of them receive them as curses. There's that very sort of like classic icon that you'll see. Actually, I was at a monastery over the weekend, and I saw like this, just like one wall of the monastery was that, icon of the judgment, right? And there's the saints that are, on the Lord's right hand, and there's the river of fire that is like pouring out onto the folk on the left. And it's like the same grace that's pouring out to everybody. You know, I can't for the life of me like track down where I read this, but I remember in seminary coming across this hymn or something which says something along the lines of, you know, the Lord's poured down the same grace upon the children of Israel in the wilderness and the people of Sodom. And, you know, the former received it as manna and the others received it as like fire and brimstone. But it was the same grace, right? It's like the same stream of time, right? The same sacred timeline. It's just like are you kicking against the goads, right? As Jesus tells Paul, or are you enjoying the ride?
Yeah, for me, like one of the working kind of metaphors that I've been having like running in my mind, and I don't know if it's a good one or a bad one, but I enjoy it, so I'm gonna hold on to it for a little bit. Is that of a river? You know, like that we're in this kind of unstoppable flow. You know, like that there's no putting out like where this is headed. There's just no getting in the way of it. And we're all in that river, no matter what. Like we just can't help it, right? Like as you said, right, that God sends down the same grace upon the Israelites as he does upon the Sodomites, and like some receive it as manna, some receive it as fire, whatever. But like this is the flow that we're all in. You can't get out of it. This is water, right? To quote David Foster Wallace. Like this is kind of like what we are supposed to wake up to see in some capacity, that all of this is water, that the God's grace, God's love, the kingdom that Jesus announces in the New Testament is within, at hand. It is here. Like it's not just something that's far off in the future and coming. Like it's something that is here within, and the liturgy reveals that very reality that is at hand. So like the river is all around us all the time. You know, whether or not we're going to have the eyes to see, right? Blessed are those who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Like this is kind of the reality that we are called in some ways to wake up to. But I think our relationship to the river is a really, really difficult one. Like, because that, you know, where it's all headed and like what the kingdom is revealed to be is this like this place that like I don't know that, first of all, well, I do know this, that it certainly doesn't mirror the kingdoms of this world, right? And so it's actually the inversion of the kingdoms of this world. So the more attached to the kingdoms of this world, in whatever capacity we are, the more incapable of seeing the kingdom of God will be. Like we just can't see it because we have too many idols in our way. You know, like the more
I don't know, man. Have you heard of Byzantium? It's primo stuff.
I have a lot of feelings about a lot of things right now that I'm going to not talk about. And I've already been called enough names in the last year and a half, so I'm not gonna do it.
Sorry, I shouldn't goad you.
Yeah, please don't. But my feeling is that this is how we are in the river. We have certain things that we want to hold on to, rocks that are in the middle of it, right? That we cling to and say, like, this is what truth is. This is what certainty is. This is what I need to hold on to and defend at all costs, right? I'm going to cling to this with my very life. We can resist the river and try to swim upstream and say, no, I don't want this. 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 Or we can try to, like, through effort, try to make the river flow faster than it actually is flowing, right? We try to push the river in some capacity by, like, really trying hard with our spiritual life, really trying hard with, getting, involved in a Christian way in politics and things to, like, usher in the kingdom of God, kind of some of this, like, stuff that we're seeing with, like, Christian dominionists and things like this, right? But I've wondered if freedom truly comes with learning simply to let go and just be in the flow and like be whatever's happening in the moment, and not to try to make it move faster or slower or hold on to anything in any capacity, but to recognize, like, oh, this kingdom of God that is at hand, revealed in the liturgy. What do I see in the liturgy? I see all of us eating and drinking from the same cup. Am I living that kind of a life where all of us are eating and drinking from the same cup? Am I feeding everyone that I see, giving drink to all who are thirsty, giving clothes to all who are naked? Like, this is, to me anyway, the best framing possibility that I have for making sense of all of it together. I don't know if that makes any sense, or if that was just a big old rabble fest, but I've been really excited about it.
Yeah, so it makes me think there's a book I read recently, which I feel like is somewhere on this desk, possibly, but it's a mess, so who knows, called The Journey of Freedom by Father Sergei Ovsyannikov. I don't know, Emma, how do you say that Slavic
Nailed
name?
it.
Just throw a bunch of consonants in there.
Ovsyannikov. That sounds more Russian. I think I did it right that time. We're gonna go with it. Father Sergei.
It's getting better. All of it's getting better.
Guys, y'all need to read this book. It's called The Journey of Freedom. It's amazing. It's kind of just like his stream of consciousness journal, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. It's very good. But he says there's a moment today, a small section of the path. If you take it locally in the right way, if you make the right choice here and now, the path is realized. And here courage is needed, because only with the next step will you see whether the previous step was successful or not. I don't know. I think I like what I think it made me think of this quote because of what you were saying, Christian, about like, are we giving food to the person in front of us? Are we giving drink? Are we fulfilling the commandment that's right before us? And by doing just that, like, what did he say? If you take it locally in the here and now, that is our way of like letting go, of not trying to push the river or cling to a rock or get distracted by a million things, like, oh my gosh, all the trees, like the leaves are falling onto the river. What should we do? I don't know, just like to not be distracted by it, but to just live locally. I don't know. I kind of like the physical location of the way he's talking about time, and do the thing that's right before you. That is kind of a way of letting go of past, future, control, idolatry. If you kind of just have the task at hand, the thing right in front of you that God's calling you to.
Yeah, which is a way of letting go and accepting, right? Because like you could try to kick out of the particular situation and swim to another part of the river because you don't want to be in that particular portion of the river that particular day. Like, this reminds me of advice that Father Andrew Damick got from Father Theodore Petrides that he's talked about a couple of times before, that the people who are in front of you are not in the way, right? They are the way. And even that can be this moment of like radical acceptance, to be like, okay, this person who was like annoying me in the moment is here for a reason. Like, our paths have crossed, right? It's we touched on Zazulus at the beginning of the podcast. Zazulus also talks a little bit about the divine yes, how it's only kind of like it's a childish impulse that causes us to say no, right? As if like that is freedom to say no to these things, but to say no actually reveals how much our hands are tied, because we're sort of rebelling against this thing that is given to us, as opposed to simply saying yes. God doesn't say no to the cross, he says yes to it. And in doing so, in saying yes to it, transforms it.
What's it called in Loki when the timeline diverges? What's it called?
Pruning.
The something moment,
nexus moment.
Nexus.
The nexus. So right, the big nexus, unanticipated, no one knows what to do with it, it's off the charts nexus moment is just that, is when Sylvie and Loki finally stop fighting against each other or competing with one another, and have a moment of like, you are the person right before me and I need you, and maybe even love you, which we didn't even go down the whole like self-love confusion of this story, but we'll pretend like he's not in love with himself and say that, like, I think that's kind of what's at play when that huge nexus that doesn't make any sense to anyone, and that kind of I don't know, messes with the authorities and the control of the TVA, is sort of that like radical acceptance of the person and the moment right at hand.
Yeah, which is hard.
Yeah, and I feel like if we have the liturgy to frame that, right, like as the revelation of the kingdom, because it's the same kingdom that's revealed in the liturgy that is always at hand. Like, it's the same kingdom, right? And this is what I love about something that we even pray in the liturgy, right? It was like, send down your Holy Spirit upon us and upon the gifts. Like, it's the same Holy Spirit that descends on us and the gifts that are on the table. Like when we're able to see that, like in taking communion, it's interesting. I've thought about this because like I've seen this happen a number of times where like people take communion and then they kiss the chalice. And it's not a bad practice. I'm not against that. But I think that what's interesting to me is that we don't, after taking communion, kiss one another, because like now we have become the chalice, right? Like if the bread and wine are in this cup and then that bread and wine is in you now, like now you're the chalice that is there to go and pour out to the world the very life of Christ given on the cross for the life of the world, right? Like this is the call. So if I can have that awareness at all times that kingdom, that same liturgy is happening now in this moment wherever I am, and like that Sunday liturgy reveals to me the shape of reality, right? Like that, it's almost like the liturgy is our nexus event, where like something is broken through and broken in, and then every time that I act in congruence with that liturgy, it's another nexus event. Like there's like another kind
You're
of
making
thing.
it truly present.
Yes, it's the same thing. It's not a different thing. It's the same thing. And yet I feel like that's the part that maybe gets lost and missed far too often in our lives, right? Like now you're the chalice. Now go do chalicey things, right? With whomever you find yourself. Go be a chalice to the people at home. Go be a chalice to the people at your work or on the street or whatever.
And you can have confidence in doing that you will be broken, and yet not divided. Like that, I don't know. You can be broken for the life of the world. That's one of my favorite Saint Maria of Paris quotes. I've read it before on this podcast, so I won't go find it. But like she talks about the altar of our hearts and how, yes, God bless, like that you can be broken for the life of the world, and yet we are like still kept whole ourselves in our willingness to be broken for the life of the world.
Because that's really the end, right? I mean, to even riff a little bit more on what Christian said earlier, right? It starts with that statement of where we're headed, right? Blessed is the kingdom, but it ends with the dismissal. It ends with us now, like, okay, this thing that you have seen here, now go and live as if this is true, right? If nothing else, go pour this out onto the rest of the world, and then come back and then do it again, right? Come back to reorient yourself and do it again, because we need that reorientation, because we forget. We need to sort of be filled again because we get depleted. But it's that dismissal at the end, right? We don't go home. We're not dismissed afterwards to kind of go back to life as it was, right? We're hopefully dismissed into the world to live in a transfigured sort of way, as if the thing that we have just done is real, as opposed to, a magic show that we sort of enjoy, clap politely, and then go home.
I just started reading a book by N.T. Wright where he talks about, he's like, if we would only just learn to actually pray and live the Lord's Prayer of like on earth as it is in heaven, like this could be it. Like that's all we really could need if we would actually mean the words when we say them and live the words when we have the chance. I thought that was good. Emma, I'm sorry I cut you off.
I was going to say something that I think is interesting, like having taught in Catholic schools for 4 years and gone to a lot of mass, is at the end, they say like the mass has ended, go in peace. But our services never say like, this is over, like the end. No, like return. It's kind of just like what Steve was saying. Like the dismissal isn't actually like okay, thanks for coming, let's have a round of applause, like show's over. It's kind of like take what you have now and depart in peace. Yeah, exactly. Let's depart in peace instead of it's over.
But actually, because we've been at this now for like an hour and a half, maybe this is a good time to depart in peace too.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. In retrospect, I wish I had spent less time summarizing the dang series so that we could have had more time to get into the stuff. I apologize.
There's so many questions that go along with all of this. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone would like the full version of the 400 quotes that I have from multiple books that I've read in the last 6 months, let us know on our hotline, and I will.
So we should set up a Patreon and share our outlines with people.
Yeah, it just made it clear that we need to do it. It'll be fun. It'll be a fun thing.
Yeah. Stay tuned for the hotline, which I wasn't consulted about, but I consent to because it sounds like a good idea.
To be clear, you were consulted about, but didn't participate in the consultation.
If a tree falls in the woods and the guy who should have heard it didn't hear it because he was distracted by other things, did it really make a sound?
Dude, if this is an intro into quantum mechanics, I'm all in for this conversation. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. There's so many quantum-y things that we didn't even get to in this conversation that I wanted to talk about, but alas.
Another hour and a half from the top.
Let's do it. What is time? Really? I mean, honestly, is it nothing more than a measurement of entropy? It's like, let's be real.
I have some quotes about that.
They're wrong.
Very well.
All of them are wrong.
Okay, well, you can take that up with Paul of Dokimov.
Gladly.
Oh, he will. He will.
Does he have a hotline? Probably not. He's a person experiencing hotline-lessness.
Oh,
I don't know. No comments on that one.
Well, it's been fun, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was great.
It was fun. Yeah.
It's good to be back. Look for our next episode next Wednesday. Today was Monday because this first week is weird. But every Wednesday, you should be getting a new episode of Pop Culture Coffee Hour, God willing, until the end of this season at some point in the indeterminate future. But we'll do this again at some point. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe what, at some
episode 200.
Maybe even before 175. That's a good, not round number, but quarter number.
That's like 8 episodes from now.
Whatever. 182. Pick one. We'll do this again.
Well, Emma and I will consider it.
182 is even, not round.
Man, I didn't realize that my terrible summation like really strained the relationships of this
I'll
podcast.
take
Emma's
over
gotta
the
do summary duty.
Steve, I can send you some worksheets. Just let me know.
Only if I get to color them.
Okay. Within the predetermined lines, but the color can be of your choice.
All right, guys. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.